Well, I want us to just take a pause and take a deep breath because I feel like I want to bow to everyone here for the amazing work that you're doing and you're bringing forth. So I thank you. And I also want to honor the work of each of you in your own countries and Hector and his amazing commitment and energy that he's put into this. And I'm also delighted to see Milani here, who's done the translation for me in other countries, which is really special. And seeing these familiar names and places they're from is just beautiful. And of course, I'm in awe and honoring of my colleagues. I mean, Marlene Smith and Dee Ray and Howard Butcher. I mean, these are stellar scholars in caring science and bring this historical connection and convergence between Rogerian and the energetic unitary field and caring in ways that have helped to advance the discipline of nursing. I feel like we're in this special place where these scholars that are here today are really the leaders in giving new meaning to the discipline of nursing, taking us to the highest level of our science, our ethics, our philosophy, our values, and the coordination and planning for this event is just, I'm stunned. So thank you, Hector. Well, I get dramatic because this is special. And let me go to my slides and I'll tell you what I'm trying to do here with this moment in time. So first of all, I want to really, again, honor and recognize my colleagues because I'm really, we all build upon each other's strengths and our scholarship. So thank you for being here. And what I'm wanting to do is to capture in the beginning the theme of the conference, which is advances and challenges of caring science. And I think what we're allowing for in this challenge and these advantages with caring science is that we're able to bring together diversity and unity as one. And so it's really beautiful to see the diversity of these countries, and yet we're all converging under this caring science and this broader unitary field that unites us across time and space and physicality and borders and boundaries and language. So it's really a moment to celebrate. So what I want to do is name these challenges. And I'll love to hear more from my colleagues. But the first challenge is, I think there's been this dissonance between what we mean by the profession of nursing and the discipline of nursing. There's a difference. And I think the professional development has been largely focusing on trying to advance the profession in contrast to advancing the discipline of nursing. And this is the advantage of this work, is that the caring science and the unitary field provides a meaningful philosophical, ethical, scientific, and theoretical foundation for the discipline of nursing. And that in turn helps to inform our professional development rather than the other way around. Of course, they interact. One is informing the other, but I think too often we have tried to conform to all the professional demands of the institutions that have defined us, in contrast to working from our own disciplinary foundation to inform and advance the profession of nursing and the practice models that really have to be transformed for the future. So the second challenge that I've identified as part of this conference is that there's been a dissonance between nursing's human universe phenomena, which embraces the whole, and the paradigm of Western science. Of course, we've been restricted in our Western science mentality to this separatist worldview. I'm separate from you, my mind is separate from my body, I'm separate from my environment. And yet, when you step into caring science, you step into a broader evolution of science with the human universe phenomenon, the unitary field. And this is where Rogerian science has so much to offer in terms of this infinite field of the energy of our humanity. So the advantage of carrying science then within this challenge is really related to how this work transcends Western science and provides a congruence between and among the human universe phenomena and this evolved unitary worldview. So I think that's another thing, that we're stepping into another evolution of our humanity, indeed, because we all need to evolve in our consciousness if we're going to survive as a planet and going to survive as humans. So the next challenge, number 3, is I feel like there's been an inconsistency between nursing's caring phenomena and the dominant paradigms that we see identified in the nursing literature from that very era 1, which is that particulate deterministic, I can go in and do something to somebody else, but it's not going to affect me. And we look at all the parts without putting them back into the whole, versus the interactive perspective in contrast to the unitary transformative era 3. And this is where you start really seeing the convergence and the building upon the Rogerian science and that unitary energy of the human and in relation to the whole. And this is where some of the earlier work of Margaret Newman actually contributed, helped to elevate this kind of consciousness to this dissonance. So the advantage here from the caring science then is that it places nursing's phenomena within the unitary transformative paradigm of science. And therefore it offers its diverse yet converging theories of caring and nursing phenomena. For example, I think we've all been, the nursing's history up to this point has been almost pre-paradigmatic. We've been looking in these silos of our advancement of knowledge and theories. But once you get to the higher level of the unitary field, and then you have caring within that field, then we have a more whole, a more mature level of our discipline. And that's my interpretation of where we are at this time. And so the 4th challenge I've identified is that human caring has been excluded from the meta-paradigm discourse in the nursing literature. And of course, this has been debated and some people still do not see it. Although it's really interesting because the latest definition of nursing actually has it defined, and you'll see a slide later where nursing is defined as the integration of the art and the science of caring, and deals with phenomena such as human healing, such as compassionate presence, such as the connecting with the whole. So you'll see that in the definition that I'll have as a slide later, because it's the first time that I have seen in my time that nursing has been included in the definition from the American Nurses Association. The previous definition was nursing is the diagnosis and treatment of actual and potential health problems. And that always bothered me because it's using medicalized language to define nursing in a more dense language of diagnosis and treatment, which is not really what we stand for in terms of human caring and healing and health and wholeness. So then the advantage of that counterpoints that challenge is that caring is now included within the meta-paradigm of nursing, at least among the most advanced scholars thinking. At least that's my interpretation. We can debate this, but I think this is what's so exciting. And the 5th challenge is that there's been this theoretical tension versus the paradigmatic congruence and clarity. And I think that's where we kind of been at this pre-paradigmatic level. And once we get to this unitary field, it allows for convergence, and we can see how things are fitting together in a congruent way. And so the fifth perspective, then the advantage of the carrying science under that challenge, is that unitary carrying science and carrying science in its whole embraces the metaphysical, the ontological, the epistemological congruence for the discipline of the future of nursing. So these things that have been dissonant over time are now coming together. For example, just in my own history, when we started our PhD program in 1978 at the University of Colorado, the whole focus was on psychosocial and biomedical science, biological. And then we kind of emerge and start critiquing. And then we started focusing on methodology. There was a whole focus on methodology. Like, you didn't matter what your phenomena was, you had to fit it into the methodology. But then we started in the nursing literature, the scholars started critiquing the methodology. Wait a minute. Methodology is informed by epistemology. And so then that got to be critiqued, like, well, epistemology includes all ways of knowing, not just empirical knowing that forces us into an empirical methodology for our science. And then the literature started back in the mid-80s, started critiquing the epistemology to the ontological. The ontology informs epistemology. So then we back up into that other ways of being human. It has to be looked at in contrast to the separatist ontology worldview, to the ontological. And now we're into this metaphysical. When you have human universe as your phenomena, you cannot ignore the metaphysical dimensions, which brings in the spirit and the unknowns, the invisible phenomena, and all these other dimensions of our humanity that we can never fully capture. So anyway, I think we're in a new place when we can begin to acknowledge and see the evolution and where we are now in terms of this congruence for the advantages and challenges of carrying science. So what I want to talk about is my work right now within the context of carrying science as sacred science. And like, what's underneath carrying science and sacred science in this kind of unitary field that I'm working through? So the first principle under what's underneath is this ethic of belonging. And I draw upon the work of Emmanuel Levinas, French scholar, philosopher. But what's important about this? He says the ethic of belonging, we belong to this infinite field of universal love as a sacred circle of life. We all come from this field, we all return to this field. And the ethic of belonging comes before our separate being. So this is really a totally revolutionary concept to consider, and yet we hold that. We hold that. I mean, look what we're doing here, uniting this ethic of belonging in this infinite field of all these countries that are here in this moment right now. And this ethic of belonging is before our separate being. So this notion of bringing love back into this infinite field of cosmic energy that unites us is really powerful. And it allows us to see, you know, if you look at some of the other philosophers and theologians, they talk about how we evolve in our higher consciousness when we are more conscious of connecting with that infinite field. If we hold caritas consciousness, caring and love, in that field of our higher consciousness, well, then we evolve as humans and we begin to see this connectedness and this unity of our being in right relation with nature, with the environment, with each other, and we're not separate. So the second principle has to do with the ethic, well, the sacred circle of life. I use this I've been using this for many years as a way to visually show the sacred circle and this cosmic energy of love that surrounds us. And we all come from this field. We all return to this field from birth to death. And what's interesting right now to see this in the sacred circle concept and the ethic of belonging is that we see this human figure, but this human figure is surrounded in a field of light. And this is 12th century work of Hildegard of Bingen, who was a healer and mystic and scholar and musician and poet and writer, etc. But what's interesting in here is it's open to the head. So here's where we connect with that infinite field of cosmic love. Like if you meditate or you hold that higher consciousness and we work from the heart up to this level, it opens us up to this spirit, this consciousness of love. So the second principle is the ethics of face. And again, this is Levinas. And the ethics of face, he says, when we look into the face of another human being, we're looking into the mystery and the infinity of the human soul. Ooh. And when we look into the mystery and the infinity of the human soul of the other, it's mirroring back the infinity of their soul. So again, it's back to that, connecting to that infinite field of belonging, that we all are connected. And you just look into the face of another person, you begin to see that connection. And so this ethics of belonging, the face and the notion of infinity are all contained in the face of the other. And it's this face-to-face connection. And the irony is that we're doing this virtual, but in some ways the virtual face-to-face is also allowing for us to transmit the energy of our connectedness through the face virtually, because our consciousness transcends time, space, and physicality. And Levinas goes on to say, with this ethics of face, he says the only way we can sustain our humanity at this very point in human history is through the face-to-face connection. Because if you are not having the face-to-face connection and seeing that ethic of belonging in these moments, we face the danger of reducing another human being to the moral status of an object. As soon as we see the other person as an object, we can justify doing something to them as an object that we would never do to them as a fully functioning person. So when we turn our faces away, we're turning our faces away from this infinity of our belonging. So it's just another very powerful ethical, philosophical foundation that informs and yet has also been there in the background of nursing across time, but we've not necessarily given voice and language to the depths of what we have to offer to humanity. So the next slide has to do the next principle of this underpinning of why is this work sacred is because it's referred to as the ethics of hands. And again, this is another philosopher I use. His name is Lokstrup, who's Danish. And he says we literally and metaphorically hold another person's life in our hands. And as health practitioners and nurses, we have this commitment. And he talks about the silent demand. By our very attitude to one another, we're shaping another's world. We help to make it bright or small or dull or threatening. And this is his words. Herein lies the unarticulate demand. And I can't see my there's in my slide. The unarticulated and in some way anonymous ethical demand to take care of the life which trust has placed in our hands. It's non-vocal, but it remains silent. But it's there in that ethics of face too. It's there calling us to respond. That's why we're all here today. And I go on to say from a quote of Lokstrup, he says this, the sovereign expression of life as given to us before and beyond the separate ego. So the ethic of belonging before the ethics of face, the ethic of belonging before our being, separate being, or beyond the ego, with these expressions of trust, of love, of honesty, of forgiveness, of gratitude, goes beyond those feelings that are negative expressions of life and transcend them and allow us to move in that higher consciousness of the Caritas consciousness. So the ethics of hands provides new meaning to the Caritas processes in my work and the transpersonal caring dimensions of our work. So here we have the exemplar of the evolution of the discipline in caring science from this latest 2022 revised definition of nursing. And here we see this focus on the art and science of caring. This is brand new. We see the facilitation of healing. I might critique that human functioning. We can talk about that maybe later. But the facilitation of healing, compassionate presence, and the recognition of the connection of all. These are very expanded concepts that the discipline, the profession has defined as part of its definition. So I think this is a sign of error. The profession is catching up with the discipline. I think that's what's being reflected here, which is exciting to me. So just dropping back into an overview of my theory quote within unitary caring science and sacred science, with those principles that are informing it, then are some core aspects of it is that unitary caring science becomes this ethical, moral, philosophical, values guided disciplinary foundation as timeless values, veritas that cannot be. They're eternal and universal. But the language of the theory are the 10 Caritas processes. So if you're practicing caring in this Caritas consciousness, then you're actually working from this unitary consciousness, this higher field. But where the theory lives are in those caring moments that are transpersonal. So in those transpersonal moments, those moments transcend time, space, and physicality, and a whole field is created in that caring moment. And every single moment is different. And every moment has to be present and call for this compassionate care to be present in these moments. But what happens in those moments affects the next moment and the next moment. So our consciousness, our energetic field, our intentionality, our heart-centered presence are all affecting what happens in that transpersonal moment. So we have to prepare. We need skills to be able to be authentically present and to have the consciousness of the practices to be able to give voice and language to the phenomenon of human caring. And I feel like and know that in this postmodern world, if you don't have your own language, you don't exist. So, I feel like if I ever made a contribution, it's giving language to the phenomenon of human caring. But locating it in this broader context really becomes more powerful because we can give voice and language to what we have to offer to humanity. It's not just preparing systems. So the last part of the context of my whole has to do with how we begin to redefine all the tasks and skills that nurses are doing and advance them under energetic caring and healing modalities that bring in both ancient and contemporary. And even if you were to go and look at Nightingale again, under these caring modalities, you would see that she's already addressed auditory, visual, sensory, olfactory, tactile, color, light, nature, energy, form. All these are already there in the blueprint of nursing, but now we get to bring them to a higher dimension of reflexology, of healing touch, of music, of sound, arts and healing, etc. So this is just a way of giving language, but when you're practicing this theory, these tasks that you might be doing a procedure, now can be seen as a caring and healing modality. You're offering this task or this procedure as a caring modality to help with your healing, helping to put you back into right relation with your wholeness. So that's just another part of understanding how nurses are already practicing this theory, so to speak, but they don't know it. So the Caritas then brings in the meaning of a deeper level of caring, because caring in a way has gotten trivialized, and it's just kind of a superficial way of everybody talking about caring. So the reason I used Caritas is to give it that deeper dimension of that sacred dimension of the metaphysical, the energetic field of love, and something to cherish and appreciate and have to develop. We take it for granted. It's here and then it's gone. So it has to be cultivated, and we have to, it's a serious epistemic endeavor. It's a serious ontological endeavor. It's a serious ethical endeavor. It's a serious philosophical endeavor. It's a serious practical endeavor to develop knowledge of human caring and healing and health and wholeness for humanity. So these 10 Caritas processes, which I will not go through because you already have exposure to them, but it really starts with self and this humanistic values that we try to sustain for ourselves and others, with this loving kindness and compassion, which takes constant evolution. We're all evolving together here. But these processes are informed by this ethics of the infinite belonging, the belonging to the infinite field of love. It's informed by the ethics of face, and the ethics of face of hands, the silent demand to take care of the life that's placed in front of us, and becomes a source for the ontological Caritas literacy, rather than just these competencies. This becomes a consciousness that I'm referring to as a literacy that holds in our consciousness as we enter that space with another human being, and informs our practice. When I'm referring to praxis beyond practice, praxis, I mean informed by our values, by our theory, by our consciousness, by our intentionality, by our worldview, so forth. So also, if you go back and understand the definition about integration of caring, of the art and science of caring, it's in these transpersonal caring moments where we find evidence of the energy of the cosmic love. And love is the greatest source of all healing. And these transpersonal caring moments with these Caritas processes is where we begin to find evidence of caring in our practices. So nurses can begin to understand, oh, I'm already practicing this, I just didn't know it. And now when you have language, it makes a difference. So I'm just going to speak a little bit more about the transpersonal caring moment and the energetic field, because it's a visual way of just helping us to see what I mean. That the nurse brings him or herself into a given moment. And I'm drawing upon the philosophy of Whitehead influenced my thinking early on, where we come with our past, who we are, our own background, our consciousness. You can go to past life if you want to get really dramatic here. But we bring ourselves to this moment. And with this moment, we have this phenomenal field. And what happens in this moment where we intersect with another person, it affects, that other person has the same trajectory. They bring who they are in that moment, all their perceptions, and this phenomenal experience that they have, and their anxiety, whatever is going on, their worldview. But when we come together, the nurse and the patient come together in a given moment, this becomes transpersonal because it transcends time and space and physicality. And it moves beyond this moment, the whole Caritas field. And depending on the nurse's consciousness, the nurse's presence, the nurse's intentionality, the nurse's awareness of how they can be present in that moment, they're affecting this field for better or for worse. You know, some of this has been referred to as biocytic field or a biogenic. It becomes life-giving and life-receiving for both the nurse and the patient when you have this spirit-to-spirit connection, if you will, in that moment. But what happens in this moment is affecting the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. So if we have a background of all these moments that are negative and we shut our hearts down, then we're going to carry that with us to the next moment. So when we face the pain and suffering and sorrows of another human being, and it gets to be too much, what happens? We shut our hearts down, and then we can become robotic and just almost destructive for ourselves and another human being. Or we can advance and evolve ourselves to be more human, to be more present, to be more compassionate, to be more attentive, to be more present to that other person, and hold that sacred space for them and ourselves in that moment, allowing us both to really advance or to evolve to another level. So this is pretty complicated, but it's so basic to our humanity because we all bring to these moments what we've experienced. So again, transpersonal, just the definition, refers to this intersubjective spirit-to-spirit connection, and it simultaneously transcends our separateness and connects us to that higher consciousness and the access to that universal field of cosmic love. And in that moment, our presence, our consciousness can actually repattern the field. If you're working with somebody who's depressed or angry, if we hold the higher vibration, we're affecting the field. So then to put it into kind of a Rogerian and quantum principles here, these are summary points. A thought is energy or light that can be shaped by our Keratos, loving consciousness. Emotions are currents of energy with different frequencies. So negative emotions such as hate or anger or fear are lower frequencies and are more dense. And then we have positive, loving, kind compassion for ourselves and others allows us to have a higher frequency of energy and light. So Keratos nursing as sacred caring science becomes a form of sacred activism. When you bring in the ethics of belonging, face, and hands, we're contributing to the advancement of humanity that's grounded in love of humanity. It's this cosmology of a unitary worldview where everything is connected. So whatever we're doing to ourselves, we're doing to others. Whatever we're doing to others in the earth, we're doing to ourselves. So this infinite field of universal love, this energy field of life becomes nature's source for healing. If we want to understand healing, we have to look to nature. If we want to understand human caring, we have to look to nursing because we have the history of developing knowledge of human caring and practicing. So these universal tasks of humanity, sustaining our humanity, of illness, of healing, of suffering, etc., of all these vicissitudes of humanity are contained within our practices. So then kind of bringing closure here, some of the essence of Watson unitary caring science, and perhaps all of it, this work of all of our scholars today, we get to bring love back into nursing, into science in a very concrete and philosophical way, and ethical way. It provides the language of the universals of human caring phenomena through the Keratos processes. It seems to be universal in terms of around the world, people relate to those. It introduces the transpersonal, the metaphysical, and the sacred dimension of our work. It provides this unitary philosophical ethical context with theory, and it restores the artistry of caring and healing arts as these sacred practices. And so in closing, I just have this quote that somebody did for me, is when we include caring and love in our science, we get to discover that caring and healing professions and disciplines are much more than a detached scientific endeavor, but a life-giving and life-receiving endeavor for humanity. And it's a reminder that we're not here for systems, we're here for humanity. And so it returns us to the light of our humanity and the sacred dimensions of our work. So thank you for listening to me. It's been a lot to process. Namaste, thank you. And I'll stop my screen share now.
Thank you so much, Jean. That was beautiful, as always, presentation. We thought that it would be just beautiful to have allow for Dr. Butcher or Dr. Ray to comment. Dr. Smith is, she's just coming back shortly. She's having to reboot her computer. But Dr. Ray, any comments just from the initial thoughts?
Yes, I do. Buenos dias, Jean. Well, I have to say, I was very privileged to be a part of Jean's early work. It's, I would say 40 years ago, at the first Caring Conference, when Jean presented her philosophy and science of caring, right at the moment when she was about to publish her first book on the philosophy and science of caring. So there were a number of us together, and we shared, you know, this beginning of our recapturing the meaning of caring. And this was back in 1978. So I was very proud also to be at the University of Colorado when Dr. Watson became the dean, and developing nursing as a caring science and nursing as a caring art and nursing philosophy, caring philosophy, and then developing the advancement of the doctoral program for our students to be exposed to the concepts and the ideas and the languaging of caring. And so for me, I've been so proud to be a part of Jean's life for all these years, and also to support her with the development of the Watson Caring Science Institute, you know, within a small sphere to begin with, and now reaching out to the world, and especially this morning, reaching out to all of our Latin American colleagues and scholars, and receiving from all of you the knowledge and beauty that you also give back to those of us that kind of began this caring movement, I guess, a long time ago. So anyway, thank you again, Jean, for the beauty of your work and the evolution of it. The and just one more thought. You know, when we say that our science is our nursing science, of course, we want to focus on this meaning of caring as love. And it's an interesting phenomenon with some of my connections with the Pari Institute, you know, with the Dr. David, with the late Dr. David Pete in Italy, and also some of his other colleagues, where they're beginning to speak about science in general as love, which is, I think, been to a large extent been developed by Dr. Watson's work, and also for helping other scientists think about the meaning of science and the meaning of our relatedness to others, and the responsibility, the ethical responsibility that we have in relating to one another in our own sphere, but around the world. And I think, even though it seems a bit gloomy now in our world, I still think that caring, and certainly meaning of it within our discipline as love will be sustained and will be advanced. So thank you again, Jean.
Well, and thank you, Dr. Ray, and all of our guest theorists today. You have laid the foundation for the future, for us to step off into the unknown and to continue this work and continue to share and continue to be the way showers for the profession and for, as you say, the scientific and the different the models and what is important, what is valuable to us at this time. So thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
Dr. Butcher wanted to hear your blue sky thoughts. Oh, sorry, Howard, yes.
Yeah, I didn't. Hi, everyone. Hi, Dr. Watson. It's been wonderful to listen to you speak. Gosh, I heard you speak back in the 80s when I discovered nursing theory and nursing science, and your work has been a constant influence and thread throughout my entire career. And to watch how your theory and your work has evolved has been such a joy to follow and to see. It's so amazing to see what's happening, like when you shared the new definition of nursing from the ANA standards of practice. And it just shows how futuristic and how far ahead you have been, and your influence in making this come to fruition. Because I think that your work is critical to the discipline and the profession, because the answer to humanizing nursing is your work. and that's what we need to do, is humanize the profession and humanize care for all. It's so foundational to your work. So the idea that nursing is caring is love is, I see that all as a unity. When I first read your work, what I thought it stand out was when you talked about nursing as caring being its moral imperative. And you were the first to really bring this ethic, I think, to theoretical work in nursing, that the ethics of our care is integral to our work. And now, you've really brought that to life with talking about, Levinas and his work, how that's been integrated into yours. And what really caught my attention is when you didn't say it today, but when you talk about ethics comes before ontology. And I just was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how ethics informs ontology.
Well, the ethic of belonging is what he was referring to. The ethic of belonging, this consciousness of the ethic of belonging comes before our separate being. So if we are just seeing ourselves as separate being on the physical earth plane, that's when we are able to objectify another human being. But if you hold an ethic of belonging, that we're all connected, then we have to pay attention to that moral imperative, if you will, that we have to sustain the humanity, the dignity, the respect of another human being. We're here to help alleviate vulnerability and preserve humanity and preserve the human dignity. That's what nurses are doing in the system. We're there preserving the humanity in the system, whether we know it or not. And one of the problems right now is that the system has prevented us from sustaining the humanity in the system, including ourselves and other health practitioners. And that's where we have to have another deeper ethic to bring this forward for our transformation of self and system from the inside out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The other way I put it, and I was influenced by my colleague, Sally Godot, who was a nurse ethicist philosopher who was on our faculty years ago, a brilliant scholar. And it goes like this. In the first instance, we have person gets reduced to patient, and then patient gets reduced to body physical. And then body physical gets reduced to machine or technology. And when you have that without the ethic of belonging, you're able to, unconsciously even, our systems and ourselves can reduce another human being to the moral status of object as soon as you start reducing them down. Just from going from person to patient is one down. And then the body physical and the way you're treated, looked at symptoms and disease and treatment. And then you're down to the technology. And when that happens, this is where you have to pay attention, because if you don't have a theory, if you don't have a philosophy, if you don't have a core value that you're able to give voice and language to for change, you actually can justify doing something to others' object as a separate being, in contrast to the belonging that they're human like us. You can justify doing something to them as object you would never do to them as a fully functioning person. So this is the day, and as soon as we label another as object or the other, this is where we have war. This is why we have the crisis in our world today.
Yeah.
So it's a heavy duty.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. I think the other point that I'm always inspired. I'm always interested in making sure that there's different roads into this work. So this is very, deeply ethical, philosophical work. At the same time, we all should understand, we all get it. Like, actually, one thing that Jean talks about is nurses are already doing this, but they need, just need to be conscious of what you're doing. You need to stand in the light and be having that professional practice model as you carry out your work can then inform that system that's actually not catering for that type of model. You need to be the shift, the dynamic, the paradigm, shift the paradigm.
Well, if, another way of thinking about it is, if nurses can give voice and language to what they have to offer and stand up and give and articulate it, this is where you need the leadership in these systems are able to do this when they have, the consciousness of caring science as their practice model. They're able to start making this change. And the other thing that happens, that we're already practicing this, but it's ad hoc in those private moments with other people. And what we wanted to do is help them to see that what they're doing in these ad hoc ways of caring, now we bring it from the margins of these ad hoc moments and make it a centerpiece for professional practices, to advance practice. And therefore, if you're in a unitary field, whatever you're putting into that field is affecting the whole. So if any one parts of the field, and nursing being the largest part, start changing, it's going to change the whole field. I mean, that's my hope.
Well, thank you so much. Absolutely. I think that we all hopefully look at all of us together uniting, and we need to acknowledge that, we are most appreciative of the folks at FAU that are with us today, but similarly, the United States healthcare system has much to learn from many other countries. So we are grateful for the lessons that we are receiving today as well, and tomorrow. I will pass on now to Loxana, who is going to introduce Dr. Ray, and we thank you so much. We're right on time, so I'm keeping my timing hat as strict. So thank you very, very much. Blessings.
Oh,